Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. In this video I want to clearly explain the MACD indicator. Now this is the second in a series of videos I've done, so check out that introduction to candlestick patterns if you haven't already. Now as I mentioned in that first video, this should just be one part of your overall strategy. So one tool at your disposal to help you formulate an opinion on where prices may or may not be heading. So MACD stands for Moving Average Convergence or Divergence. So it's a trading indicator invented in the 1970s by Gerald Appel, supposed to reveal changes in the strength, direction, momentum and duration of a trend in the stock or cryptocurrency price. So the key word there is trend. We're looking to identify those changes in trends. So the MACD itself is made up of a couple of fancy components. Again, it's not critically important to understand how they work. What's important is the takeaway messages that you can read when you see certain things happen on the charts. So the first part is the MACD line itself, the blue line. Now that's made up of two different moving averages and they depend on whatever time frame you're looking at. So if we're looking at a daily chart, it's just going to be the 12-day exponential moving average minus the 26-day exponential moving average. Again, if we're looking at an hourly chart, that period there just becomes hourly. So the difference between those two exponential moving averages appears as this blue line that oscillates up and down here below the zero line on this graph. The next part is this red signal line. That's just a 9 period again. So if we're looking at daily or hourly, it's all relevant. So if we're looking at a daily chart, it's just the 9-day exponential moving average. Again, that just oscillates up and down, a different moving average. So the difference between these two lines is the grey bars here called a histogram, and that's all they represent, just the difference between these two lines, the change, the gap between the two different moving averages. So look, if we're accelerating to the upside, the blue line is moving away from the red line. They appear as grey bars above the zero line. Again, if we're accelerating to the downside, the grey bars on the histogram appear to the downside of this zero line. So hopefully that's a good explanation of how those three components work to the MACD. Let's head over to the charts and give you some real world examples of how traders use the MACD to their advantage to identify changes in trends. So the first one here, if we grab the MACD and just expand that a little bit, you can get that indicator up by simply clicking up here and typing MACD. So the first one that traders look at is simply crossovers. So when one moving average crosses the other, that can be a change in trend. And again, we had a bit of a downtrend after we got this cross. So this is just a daily chart of Bitcoin priced in US dollars. Again, we get that acceleration to the upside, that crossover, and we start a nice long uptrend. So that's a pretty basic use case for the MACD. Now the next one is just extremes. So let's have a look at when the price is really accelerating to the downside or to the upside, and we get the peak in the histogram that represents the gap between these two moving averages. So again, this is when the histogram got to its most extreme, and it did identify a temporary top for us before a pullback. And again, when we get to the extreme to the downside here, this is the largest bar on the histogram. It's a visual representation of those moving averages accelerating away from the other, and that was the bottom of this correction that identified a change in trend that then resumed to the upside. So look, that's the first two use cases for the MACD, but the one that I think is a little bit hard to get your head around but does tend to work really well is the divergence in the MACD and the price. So let's just say that price for this given period here is trending upwards, but the MACD was diverging. The MACD was doing something different for the same time period. It was trending down, and that can show you that there's actually weakness in the market. Now, I don't want to overcomplicate it, but if you can identify a divergence like this, this can really be one tool to help you formulate that opinion that, hey, this might be the top. So even though prices got higher, the MACD is showing me some weakness. So that's a divergence. And sure enough, then we get a crossover, and that was your second hint or signal, along with everything else that's happening in the market, to formulate your opinion that the top was in, just from a technical perspective. So let's head over to the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio. Some people trade this ratio alone. It is available on Bitfinex. Now let's see if this works when we're trying to pick a bottom. So again, let's just grab that MACD, make it a bit larger so this is easy to see. And we've been in this long sustained downtrend and we're trying to pick a bottom. So price is still going down here, but at the same time, the corresponding time period, the MACD is trending up. So that can be that hint, that divergence that we look for. So rather than both price and MACD trending down, we're now getting the MACD to start to turn up to give us a hint that the bottom might be around the corner. And then we get that there, and that was a nice trade that gave you 50 or 60% to the upside thereafter. So guys, I hope that's a clear explanation. 3 examples of how traders use the MACD to their advantage in the real world. Please hit like, subscribe if you haven't already, share these videos around, and I'll do more trading tools and indicators in the future. Cheers.